those hormone balances change in the plant. Mostly in hydroponic situations, we are going to be using the osmotic differential between the substrate and the plant itself. So if we think about, here's the cells in the plants, they have Tugger pressure. That's one of the reasons that they're pulling up water and nutrients, is because of the osmotic differential. And so really what's happening is when we're in a hydroponic situation like cocoa, rock wool, or any of the soilless medias that are used in most popular cannabis cultivation, indoor specifically and especially, the matrix potential matrix potential is the amount of vacuum that the roots have to apply to the substrate, right? And so if we take rock wool, for example, that matrix potential is very linear. And so that substrate can go to pretty much almost 0% water content before the plant actually starts to feel a significant irrigation or drought stress, as traditional crops refer to it. So absolutely, yes. When we're talking about generative steering, it's typically making sure that that EC has some amount of rise. And to bring back the last question in here, you have to be supplying it enough nutrients to allow that thing to stack up. And so typically when we see these charted up, you'll have a much steeper slope on your EC climb when you're generative steering versus when you're vegetative steering. And actually early in flower, typically what we'll do is we'll have smaller amounts of runoff, and we're not going to be pushing that back down as far when we irrigate. So we'll actually see a little kind of a stair step that each day is going to climb up in EC for a while.
Awesome. I love that question too. Taylor, thank you for dropping those. Those were good ones. It's going to be rapid fire today, Jason. I'm going to keep it moving. We got another one here on YouTube from McRobbins85. They want to know, have you looked at volume water content at the time of harvest and its effect on final quality, aside from it affecting drying times and the amount of water that needs to be removed? You got any thoughts on that?
I haven't done a lot of trying to analyze this, and yeah, I think really the question is breaking down is, we want to be hitting field capacity every day, even during ripening, right? Traditional sense, we usually do. And so when we're thinking about, all right, when we're ripening, we might be reducing the amount of, or we're trying to reduce the amount of nitrogen that's going into these plants at that time. Basically reducing carbohydrates on there so we can have a cleaner burn. And one of the things that's going on with that is we are trying to supply either just slightly less nutrients or a modified nutrient composition. And what the volumetric water content is, I would still typically be hitting my field capacity at a daily basis, because I would want to be using the right size substrate for the size of plants that I'm using. And so during ripening, it's very likely I'll be at a 25 to 30% dryback. And that means that even if I am hitting field capacity in something like cocoa or rock wool, I'm going to be at a pretty low water content even when I go to harvest. And that being said, it's definitely okay to not irrigate the day that you're going to harvest.
Oh, good. Thank you for that. My one little cola having plant, I'm harvesting her this weekend, so I'm glad to know I don't have to water her beforehand. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, McRobbins85. On a similar note, we got this question in from Iron Armor last week. We weren't able to get to it, but it's timely. They wrote, is there any difference between full saturation and field capacity in a growing medium?
Good question. In application sense, no, there's really not. When we're talking about, what is field capacity? Well, field capacity is when our substrate is holding as much water as it can without having some amount of runoff, right? And so that just basically is based on how much pore space we have and some of the physical molecular interactions between the substrate and water itself. And so when we're talking about field capacity, it's just going to be how much can that hold. And so usually for something like rock wool, we see those numbers in say the 65 to 75%, right? So if we've got a rock wool block that was 1 gallon of substrate, liter substrate, the volume of it, if our field capacity is at say 70%, then that's going to be 0.7 liters of water that substrate can hold.
Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Iron Armor. We posted it again today. We knew we wanted to get to that one today. We appreciate your patience on that. All right, we're going to keep it going. We got these questions posted on YouTube recently from Diana. 2 questions. Number 1, can you use VPD with 1,000 watt lights?
Yes,